Hi there, and welcome to the New York School of Design's Intro to Digital Design. My name is Vidal Cyperly Valencia, and I'm a fashion designer here in New York City. So we're going to spend some more time learning on the pen tool. We're going to learn a few more manipulation tools within Illustrator. So I hope you're ready, and we're just going to jump right in. When we're creating sketches or we're making adjustments, sometimes you want to rotate them. And there's sort of 2 or 3 different ways to go about doing this. You can rotate them, of course, utilizing the rotate tool, which is effectively going to set an axis if you select an object. So if I select this star here, and I click the rotate tool, which is here, you can see it's setting the axis, and then if I click any of these points, it's going to rotate it. But if I want it to be at a different axis, I just have to hold Option and set that axis point. So now my axis is over here. I'm still holding the rotate tool, and now it's going to rotate around that axis. Of course, in a case with like a path or just a line, you can free rotate like this. That will then modify some of the shape itself or the scale or how long your path is. You can do the same with just utilizing the regular selection tool or the black arrow, and you can see this star is within this bounding box. So I can just rotate it like so. What if you have a shape like this heart, for example, and you want to finish the heart? So there's a few ways to go about doing this. You could do Command-C, Command-V to copy-paste your object. You can take it up here while selected and go to Transform and Reflect. This will allow you to pick an axis to reflect it on, and so I want it to be vertical. And we click OK, and that is the second part of my heart. Now, what if you don't want to do all of that? And so what I usually do is I take the Reflect tool over here. So you hard press on the Rotate tool to select the Reflect tool. I make sure I have my piece selected. I go to the Reflect tool. I hold Shift to click one point for the axis, and then I'm still holding Shift, and then hold Option and click again at the bottom. And that will reflect my object perfectly over to the other side of the axis that I've set when holding Shift. I use this a lot when I'm drawing flats. I'll draw half the body and then reflect it over, and then you can then join the 2 pieces together. Now, there's a couple of ways to go about doing the joining. Sometimes if you have just disparate sort of pieces of lines, for instance, so if I have this line, then I have an identical one over here, I can take my direct selection tool, select both of these points, and I can do Command J, which is going to join the 2 objects together. Now, it'll just fill in a path in between the 2 points I've selected, so that's not always exactly what you want either, and so that is where Shape Builder comes in. And so with Shape Builder, you can select both pieces of your shape. However, you want to make sure they're overlapping just a little bit, and you select both pieces. And the Shape Builder tool is this one right here. I showed you this in lesson 1, but just again, when you have both selected, you'll see when you hover over them, it's sort of this halftone black dot pattern. And so if I select and I just draw this line through it, it is now turning this into one shape, which is now my heart. So when you're working with sketches, there is one crucial aspect that I always recommend you learning, and that is grouping. And grouping basically means you tell the software to keep elements you've selected to stay with each other. And so, for instance, I have this sketch. Let's say I wanted to try to move it around, but I didn't want to select the whole thing every single time, or I didn't want to grab the lasso tool because it's in between a bunch of other sketches, something like that. If I were to just grab these pieces, they're all going to kind of fall apart. However, as you can see, my sleeve here is grouped, which means when I move any part of the sleeve around, the shadow, the seam, the stitching, the little lines I've added, all move with it. And so the way we can do this is we can select all of the objects we want, and then we just go to Object, Group, and now if I were to click this, it all moves as one piece. So every single piece that I've selected here now moves together. If I want to ungroup it because I want to begin editing it separately again, I just go here to Ungroup, and now these are all separate pieces once again. This can also be done by selecting and right-clicking, which you can then group all of them together from the right-click menu that pops up. Similarly to grouping is locking objects, and so sometimes For instance, when you have something you want to draw over, or you want to trace, or you're using a template of some kind to sketch something, or you've uploaded an image that you've done by hand, but you want to redo something about it in Illustrator, you want to resketch part of it in Illustrator. Sometimes you don't want anything about it to move. And so I'm going to group these all together. So I'm going to group each color to be separate. So I'm just utilizing selection, and I'm going Command G, which is the shortcut for grouping. And now what I can do is I can lock the objects. So if I select these two, and I go to Object, Lock, Selection, if you pick these other two, it'll select this will do other layers, which will do everything but that. All artwork above will do everything above my selection. And the selection is what I want right now. So I'm just going to click Lock Selection. And now I cannot do a single thing to these sketches. I can't draw on them. I can't move them. I can't delete anything from them. If I take the pen tool, there's nothing. You'll see it pops up, in this case, an error because I didn't pick a segment. But in this case, it's saying I didn't pick a segment because I can't select anything to do with this sketch. So this really protects your object in terms of it not being deleted on accident, it not getting edited on accident, parts of it shifting when you're working with a large document. One thing to note is that if you were to take your artboard tool, as we learned in lesson 1, which is this one, if you try to move these objects, based on default settings, it will usually pop up with a window that says any locked objects won't be moved. I've personally turned that setting off. However, we can talk about that more in depth in class itself.